Deep beneath the Utah Mesa, the team of scientists on Skinwalker Ranch stumbled upon something that defied the boundaries of material science. What started as a simple geological drilling project became the unearthing of an extraordinary ceramic material, one that absorbed heat in ways no known substance could. When exposed to liquid nitrogen at minus 320 degrees Fahrenheit, it refused to cool. When placed over a magnet, it levitated slightly, displaying the Meissner effect, a hallmark of superconductivity. These strange ceramics, retrieved from more than 470 feet inside the mesa, possess not only unusual thermal retention, but also a capacity to morph and repair their molecular surface after exposure to electron beams. The surface opened, developed holes, and then sealed itself again once the energy was withdrawn. To the team, this was not just anomalous, it was impossible. They concluded that this material, likely covering a massive buried object, was manufactured at its uniform thickness and density too precise to have occurred naturally. The deeper they dug, the stranger it became. The mesa's internal structure resisted drills designed to penetrate granite and steel. Bits of titanium alloy broke off, fused together by friction, but the drill head emerged cool to the touch. It was as though the material itself absorbed heat energy, defying basic thermodynamics. Archaeologists at the site uncovered man-made ceramics and a U.S. coin from 1964 embedded in the soil, proof that some human excavation had taken place decades ago, perhaps to bury or recover something extraordinary. The discovery suggested a historical cover-up linked to aerospace materials from the Cold War era. The team speculated that the government, or possibly a private aerospace entity, might have hidden something in the mesa after an experimental craft crashed something so advanced it could alter the future of propulsion. At the same time, another enigma unfolded above ground. Using infrared LiDAR scans and electromagnetic sensors, the team detected what they called the bubble, an invisible sphere hovering around the triangle region of the ranch, stretching over 2,000 feet across and hundreds of feet below the surface. The bubble appeared to interfere with radio waves, GPS signals, and even physical objects. Drones stalled mid-air rockets, diverted from their course, and signals, at one point 2 and 1, 6 gigahertz, repeated mysteriously as if reflected or imitated by an unseen force. To test the bubble's boundaries, the team detonated massive fuel charges to create smoke rings, but the rings distorted into strange figure-8 patterns as they rose, suggesting collision with an invisible barrier. Cameras' malfunction data was wiped, and radiation readings plummeted to 0. Every attempt to measure or provoke the bubble produced cascading anomalies. High-speed cameras reset to factory defaults. GPS sensors registered locations miles away. Radiation meters dropped to null, and drones reported phantom aircraft warnings. When analyzed, thermal imagery revealed hot signatures racing across the mesa ridge, just as UAPs, elongated objects invisible to the naked eye, streaked across the sky. The team witnessed not just a single phenomenon, but a convergence, a buried technological artifact below, and a vast, possibly artificial field above reacting to energy inputs. In Salt Lake City, the scientists presented their findings to a panel of experts: Jay Stratton from the UAP Task Force, astrophysicist Eric Davis, geneticist Gary Nolan, and General Lance Lord from U.S. Space Command. Each admitted that the data transcended current science. The ceramic's superconductive potential could revolutionize propulsion, perhaps explaining unidentified craft capable of silent, gravity-defying flight. The invisible bubble behaved like a self-contained energy field, one that distorted space-time and data collection. The team theorized that the mesa object and the bubble were linked parts of a single structure, possibly ancient, buried deliberately beneath the ranch. As the year closed, ranch owner Brandon Fugel announced the next step: collaboration with a SpaceX integrated company, SEOPS. They would launch a dedicated 6 U-CubeSat satellite into orbit aboard a Falcon 9 rocket to monitor Skinwalker Ranch from space. For the first time, the investigation would expand beyond ground and air to include the cosmos. With daily orbital passes, the satellite would analyze signals, magnetic flux, and temperature variations, connecting the anomalies between Earth and sky. For the scientists, this was not the end of an experiment. It was the beginning of a new paradigm. Somewhere within the mesa and inside the shimmering field above, something was waiting, perhaps a relic, perhaps a message. And Skinwalker Ranch, long dismissed as folklore, had become a laboratory for the impossible. There are places in the world where science and myth collide, where human instruments tremble at the edge of comprehension. Skinwalker Ranch, a barren stretch of land in northern Utah, has become one such frontier. For decades, it has been whispered about in the language of the extraordinary shifting lights and visible forces sightings that defy reason. But when a new team of scientists arrived to measure, to document, and to cut through the fog of legend, they found something that refused to fit into any framework of modern physics. The deeper they dug, both literally and intellectually, the more it seemed that the Earth itself was concealing an intelligence of its own. The first indication came not from the sky, but from the ground. The drilling team, equipped with industrial bits capable of boring through steel, struck something within the mesa that was not rock and not metal as we know it. The drill head fused solid after minutes of friction, yet when pulled from the shaft, it was cold to the touch, as if the material had absorbed the heat instead of producing it. In the sludge that followed came shards of a strange ceramic substance, perfectly uniform in thickness, heavy yet delicate, and most intriguingly warm. It was the kind of discovery that makes seasoned geologists fall silent. Something inside that mesa was not natural. Tests at Utah Valley University turned astonishment into disbelief. When the ceramic fragments were immersed in liquid nitrogen, they refused to cool, boiling the nitrogen away for minutes on end without losing heat. When placed above a magnet, the samples floated slightly, shifting sideways in midair, the unmistakable sign of the Meissner effect, a property of superconductors. Superconductivity, the ability to transmit energy without resistance, is the holy grail of physics, a technology still in its infancy in the human world. Yet here it was, buried hundreds of feet inside a Utah hillside. Under the scanning electron microscope, the material became even stranger. When struck with an electron beam, the surface opened into microscopic pores, tiny geometric holes that closed themselves again as soon as the beam was turned off. It was as if the ceramic healed itself. A material that could transform, absorb, and restore its structure, behaving like a living thing. Dr. Eric Bard and his colleagues ran control tests with ordinary ceramics. No transformation, no levitation, no heat retention. The mesa material was unique. It was by every measurable property manufactured. Someone, or something, had designed it. The archaeologist Chris Roberts, sifting through the excavation spoils, confirmed the impossible. The ceramic pieces were machined with mechanical precision too, even to be handmade. Embedded near them, he found a U.S. nickel dated 1,964 left deliberately as a timestamp typical of archaeological digs, a human signature in a place that should have been untouched. Was this evidence of a secret excavation decades earlier? Had someone discovered this artifact during the Cold War, perhaps connected to the aerospace programs of the 1,960 seconds the aluminum oxide coating found on the metallic fragments matched precisely the protective layers used on NASA spacecraft during the Apollo missions? If that were true, then the mesa might be a burial ground, not of legend, but of technology, one deliberately hidden from public view. While the scientists pondered the buried materials, their instruments above ground began to detect something even more confounding, a vast invisible sphere enveloping the central area of the ranch. Infrared LiDAR scans outlined its contours. Electromagnetic readings spiked whenever equipment crossed an unseen threshold. The team named it the bubble. It was not metaphorical, it was measurable, a geospatial boundary about 2,000 feet in radius, half above ground and half beneath. Within it, drones failed, GPS coordinates shifted unpredictably, and radio frequencies multiplied themselves like echoes in an empty chamber. It was as though the air itself had been programmed to resist intrusion. Seeking to understand it, the team devised a spectacular experiment. They called in a pyrotechnics crew to detonate massive fuel charges at key points along the bubble's radius. Each explosion was designed to produce smoke rings, perfect circular forms that would rise through the air, revealing distortions or resistance within the invisible field. But nothing went as expected. The first explosion produced an unnatural figure-8 shape the smoke, twisting as if colliding with an unseen wall. The second ring split cleanly in two when it reached about 2,000 feet, precisely the bubble's boundary. High-speed cameras recording at 1,400 frames per second malfunctioned simultaneously, their settings mysteriously reverting to factory defaults. Spectrum analyzers detected sudden spikes at 1.2 gigahertz and later at 1.6 gigahertz frequencies previously associated with unidentified aerial phenomena in the region. The coincidences were too precise to ignore. Every subsequent test deepened the enigma. Drones flying through the bubble froze mid-air, reporting phantom obstacles that didn't exist. Rockets launched toward it veered away at sharp angles as if repelled. Radiation detectors dropped to zero, forming what physicists called a dead zone. And in the midst of the chaos, thermal cameras captured fleeting shapes, elongated glowing entities crossing the Mesa Ridge before vanishing into thin air. Even stationary GPS units reported movement across miles of terrain as though space itself had been stretched. To the naked eye, nothing had changed, but to the instruments, reality had buckled. The scientists began to theorize that the bubble might not be a passive structure, but a dynamic field responding to energy input. Every detonation, every laser beam, every broadcast signal seemed to awaken it. One experiment involved firing colored lasers through the air to measure atmospheric interference. The lasers bent flickered, and in one unforgettable image, a glowing object appeared directly within a beam, slicing through it before vanishing. Equipment failed immediately afterward. It was as though the bubble was not merely reflecting energy, but interacting with it, watching, responding, even testing those who dared to test it. By the time the team gathered in Salt Lake City to review the year's data, they had the attention of some of the most respected minds in the country. Jay Stratton, former head of the Pentagon's UAP task force, sat beside astrophysicist Dr. Eric Davis, biologist Dr. Gary Nolan of Stanford University, and retired General Lance Lord from the U.S. Air Force Space Command. Together, they examined images of the self-repairing ceramics, the magnetically levitating samples, the split smoke rings, the vanishing drones. One conclusion was unavoidable: the phenomena on Skinwalker Ranch could not be explained by current human science. Dr. Nolan remarked that if these materials could truly conduct energy without resistance, they could revolutionize everything from space travel to global power systems. General Lord noted that the materials resembled classified aerospace composites used in atmospheric re-entry shielding. Dr. Davis, long involved in theoretical propulsion research, suggested the possibility of an artificially generated gravitational field, an engineered environment rather than a random anomaly. Brandon Fugel, the ranch's owner, sat at the head of the table, quiet but resolute. For years, he had funded the investigation with the conviction that science, not superstition, would uncover the truth. Now surrounded by experts from aerospace physics and intelligence, he sensed that the ranch was not simply haunted, it was hosting a conversation with humanity through the language of anomalies. To him, the ceramics beneath and the bubble above were parts of the same system, a machine embedded within the earth, communicating through physics rather than words. The final act of the year transformed that conviction into a mission. Partnering with SEOPS, a company integrated with SpaceX's launch program, the team announced that they would send a small satellite, a 6U CubeSat, into orbit aboard a Falcon 9 rocket. Its sole purpose to observe Skinwalker Ranch from space. The satellite would pass overhead daily, collecting data on electromagnetic frequencies, radiation flux, and thermal anomalies, scanning for patterns invisible from the ground. For the first time, the investigation would extend beyond the boundaries of the ranch, connecting Earth's surface with the cosmos above it. The scientists imagined triangulating data between underground sensors, airborne drones, and the satellite's orbital readings, forming a three-dimensional map of the unknown. The implications stretched far beyond Utah. If the ceramics truly were superconductors, they could represent a technology centuries ahead of human development, a potential explanation for the silent, gravity-defying craft reported in military encounters worldwide. If the bubble was an electromagnetic containment field, then Skinwalker Ranch might not merely be a site of phenomena, but a functioning system, an energy architecture hidden in plain sight. Some speculated that it was an ancient installation, perhaps extraterrestrial, designed to study Earth or protect something buried deep below. Others suspected human involvement, a Cold War experiment in advanced energy or propulsion, accidentally lost to secrecy. Yet none could deny the correlation between the discoveries above and below the buried object seemed to hum in resonance with the invisible sphere, as if the two were mirrors of the same design. When winter fell over Utah and the investigations paused, the ranch lay quiet again under a pale sky. But those who had seen the Mesa ceramics glow and the smoke rings collapse knew that quiet was an illusion. Beneath the frozen ground, under layers of sand and time, something waited, metallic, intelligent, patient. In the skies above the bubble, shimmered, unseen, pulsing with faint radio echoes like a heartbeat in the clouds. Skinwalker Ranch was no longer a myth, nor even a mystery. It was an open equation written across land and air, inviting those who dared to solve it. The scientists packed their instruments, but none left unchanged. For them, the question had shifted from what is happening here to what are we being shown. Every anomaly, every malfunction, every unexplained shimmer seemed deliberate, a dialogue through distortion. The Mesa's ceramics whispered of mastery over matter. The bubble hinted at command over space itself. Together they formed a narrative of impossible intelligence, perhaps ancient, perhaps ongoing. And as the team prepared for their satellite's launch, a quiet understanding took root among them. Skinwalker Ranch might not be revealing its secrets at all. It might be measuring us, waiting to see how far human curiosity would dare to reach.